Hello, welcome to the Vandahigh Company. Today we are going to be making the natural grapevine wreath for your holiday front door. My name is Kelly.
And my name is Emily. So let's get started.
All right.
First, we're going to start by going through all the different elements. There's a lot of fresh, different greens, so I want to show each one to you so that when I start talking about them, you know what I'm talking about. So, initially we're going to start off with some of our more traditional evergreens. So this is the white pine. It's got really long needles on it and it's very soft. Then we have our balsam fir. This is really flat and it has really short needles. You'll notice that the back of the branch is a little bit different color than the front. You'll kind of want to keep that in mind as to how you're placing that on your wreath.
And these are going to be the first two greens that we'll be using in our wreath to help establish the shape.
Let's do the Carolina Sapphire next. This really reminds me of juniper. It's got almost star-shaped needles on it, and it has a nice blue hue, so that's going to help pull all of our colors together. Then we'll start with our eucalyptus. So there's two kinds of eucalyptus. There's going to be the silver dollar, which has really big leaves. And then we also have the seeded, which has the seed heads and then really thin, narrow leaves.
All right. Good?
Yep. Okay, so then our two blue elements. This stuff is called brunia. We're going to be taking just the seed, those things. And then we might take some of this too, depending on how much we need. This stuff is called sea holly or eryngium. So we're going to be using these nice blue flowers that it has to help kind of tie in the Carolina Sapphire and all those other blues. And then to get some great contrast, we're going to be using magnolia. Obviously there's two different colors that it brings, so we'll be utilizing both of that in there. All right, I think that is it. You'll have a bag in your kit that's going to have the lotus pods and the cotton, so we'll put that on at the very end. You'll want to have on hand either some pruners or some heavy-duty kitchen scissors to really cut through some of the branches. I would recommend pruners. And then you'll also want some sort of glue. You can either use hot glue guns or a hot glue pot thing. That's what we'll be using. It's really stringy, so you'll see me pulling off a bunch of strings throughout the whole video. So first we're going to start off with our white pine. Again, this has the long needles and it's very airy. You're going to want to cut it down by where it meets the branch there, so it's a little bit longer, and because this is the part you're going to want to put glue on. You don't want to put glue up here because then it just kind of clumps everything together and then it doesn't look as nice.
I might have cut this piece a little bit too long for Emily, but keep in mind that as you're working, it's always easier to cut your piece shorter than to make it longer. So a little extra stem is okay to start working with, especially when you first get going and you're getting the hang of it. So.
And we'll be layering a lot of stuff over the top of it too, so I'm okay if there's a little bit of a stem showing because that'll get covered. So then we're going to get to our wreaths. So these are natural grapevine wreaths. And basically what that means is they're not perfect. So they are pretty close to symmetrical and circular, but they're not exactly. So you're going to kind of want to decide what way your wreath is going to go, and then decide which part is going to be the top and which part is going to be the bottom. So this is a little bit fuller over here, and I'm going to cover this skinny part up. So I'm going to put that over here. I'm going to be working on the left side, just because it's a little bit easier and closer to me how I'm standing. But feel free to choose, you can work from the right side, you can work from the bottom, you can work from the top. It's completely up to you. So what we're going to do first is we're going to kind of establish the overall shape of our wreath. We're going to be using our white pine to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take some of these bottom needles off, just because if they get in the glue, it just makes a bigger mess than what I'm ready for. So.
And you do have a lot of product here, and you probably aren't going to use all of it, so feel free to be really particular about which pieces you use. If some of it looks scraggly, feel free to pull some of it off, and you'll see the same with the balsam. Obviously we're using all natural product here, so they're not perfect or uniform, and yours will look different than ours, but You know, just if you have a little scraggly piece on there, feel free to just pull some pieces off and make it work easy for you. Pull some of the foliage off of the stems so that you have a nice smooth pick to poke into your wreath, especially with these natural grapevine ones. Any extra foliage is just gonna get a little messy for you.
Yeah. So yeah, like Kelly mentioned, we're gonna kind of be working on towards the inside of the wreath because that's the part that's gonna help hold all of that together for us. So I'm gonna start, you're gonna wanna decide how far you want your greens to go. Do you want them to be just really small and over here, or do you want them to be like halfway over, or, you know, 3/4 of the way? I'm gonna stick closer to the halfway point just because I love the look of the grapevine wreath, so I wanna see a lot of that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my white pine, I'm gonna dip the end in glue, like so, and then I'm just gonna kind of stick it right in there. And feel free to turn it so that it lays at a more natural, you know, in a more natural way, and kind of pinch the wreath as best you can. You don't want to pinch too hard because it is dried grapevine, so it will break, but just enough to get it to stick.
And Emily mentioned as we started that the balsam has 2 different sides, which as you're working with it, you're going to notice the back side is a little bit paler of a color. It's also going to arch forward a little bit, which is going to be important to your wreath. So if you face it with your back forwards, that's going to make it arch backwards a little bit, which isn't wrong actually. You can make some really beautiful movement with your wreath through that. And facing it forward is going to bring it forward. So to add more depth to your wreath, keep in mind that the way you place your balsam branches are going to help define that.
I'm just going to kind of work towards the bottom of the wreath just because I've got a really nice piece that I think will work really well. So just kind of beware, right, when you're working on the bottom of the wreath, this stuff is going to fall closer to the ground. So that's probably about halfway. Actually, no. And feel free to change your mind and move stuff around. Working with glue, you've got a little bit of leeway, but not a lot. So kind of have some sort of a vision in mind before you start. So I kind of want that to look like this. And when you're working with these longer pieces, where you want the end of the wreath to be, you're going to kind of want to measure where the back will be. So you'll want to hold it up first before you start doing all that. And if this stuff starts flopping forward, that's okay. We're going to be layering stuff on top, so that'll help keep everything in place.
Also pieces like this white pine that I have here, it's the very tip of the pine branch, so it has 4 little shoots coming up of here, and a piece like this can really help you build a depth in your wreath too, if you need to bring it forward a little bit.
So I'm just kind of layering my white pine along the top and the bottom of the wreath, just because I want that to kind of be the backbone. It's a really soft, airy texture. It's got a little hint of blue, so it really is going to help pull all those elements together, and plus you have a lot of it, so you've got a little bit more to work with than some of those other products. And then I think I'm going to stick one closer to the center of the wreath just because I do want that texture to show up behind some of the other stuff. So kind of just like that. The beautiful part about the grapevine wreath is it will hold stuff for you without glue. So what I did was I kind of went around with my balsam and I just stuck them in where it fit. And now I'm going to go back and glue. It's a great way to kind of be able to move some pieces, figure out you know, what works and what doesn't. And actually, the balsam is such a beautiful blue that really ties in with the pine. I laid my pieces upside down when it was in the pine. I'm like, this piece, I don't know that I need him, so I might just keep him out of there and then scooch this guy down a little bit more. So basically what I did was I went around, I stuck some pieces going this way towards the top, and then I stuck some pieces going this way towards the bottom. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue those in, and then when we come back we'll be working with the Carolina Sapphire to help kind of finish off these points a little bit more. so now I'm going to start with my Carolina Sapphire. This is great because it has some amazing pointy parts, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my pruners and I'm going to cut it back to kind of where all of this good stuff is back here. And I'm just going to cut that right out. Again, I'm going to glue this part, so I'm going to want to take off that excess greenery. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up kind of putting this in like that, more or less. So basically that's going to help create my finished point. You're going to kind of want to play it off of your off of the white pine, so it kind of just forms one perfect point like that. So just dip it in your glue or hot glue it and kind of stick it right in there like that. And feel free to kind of tuck it behind stuff and, you know, pull things in front or behind, whatever. This wreath is it's going to be very personal and personalized. So yeah. Okay. So now I'm going to take some of these other pieces and cut these off and put them a little bit further back in the wreath. So maybe back in here. Just to kind of help bring this awesome color throughout the whole thing. These three greens are really going to help create the body of your wreath, and then you'll be putting some of the really fun other fresh and dried ingredients on top of it. So again, kind of go and find your next point and cut that off back towards the branch. Strip it a little bit towards the base. Alright, so now I'm going to work off of the bottom. So you're going to need another one of these. You're going to kind of want it similar length to the top, so probably about like that. Again, take some of the bottom off. And glue. And just kind of lay it in there. Alrighty, so now that we've got both the points going, we're going to want to put some more back up in here again, like we did with the top. And these pieces don't need to be as long either, so you can cut them a little bit shorter than how you did the other ones. And you're going to kind of want to follow the curve of the wreath. So kind of keep them going a little bit in, or you can have them go out. It's completely up to you, whatever look you want to achieve. And feel free to take a step back and kind of look at it. I know it's hard to tell now, we're missing a lot of the elements, but you just kind of want it to be the right shape that how you want it to be. So, alrighty, so now we're going to start on our seeded eucalyptus. You'll notice there's a lot of different sizes and shapes that we're going to use, but I'm just going to start with this really full piece. And I'm going to cut it a little bit below here, probably maybe 2 to 3 inches. And I'm actually going to glue a little bit back further on there because I want it to lay flatter on the wreath instead of going every which way. So you can see I put the glue a little bit up further onto the stem. Now I want that to kind of lay a little bit closer to the center. So just inside that Carolina Sapphire we just put in the wreath. And it doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical. This part doesn't have to exactly match that part. It's very much a free-form, natural-looking wreath. So there's a lot of different possibilities with this one. There we go. I think that's going to be about all of the seeded eucalyptus I use. I've got a couple more things I want to add in here, and I don't want it to get too busy. Alright, next we're on to our silver dollar eucalyptus. A little goes a long ways with this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with just one stem. I'm going to cut it down maybe about 8 inches. I'm going to pull off that last leaf. Now I'm going to kind of put this out towards the back of my wreath. It's still going to kind of go with the flow, but I don't want too much of it. And I do want it to kind of be just, I think that might be too much. So I'm going to take off this branch here. Keep it like that. Again, put your glue a little bit more up onto the stem so that it helps it lay a little bit flatter. I'm going to kind of tuck it in behind some other elements here. And just kind of have it flow up the side of the wreath. And then this piece that I discarded, just going to fill in on the outside again, kind of like that. And the beautiful part about this is if once you're done, you say, oh, I think there's too much of something or this doesn't quite fit, you can either pull it out because it's glued in or you can just cut it out with your pruners. Alright, now we're going to move on to our magnolia. So for these, you're going to want to cut back right where that part of the leaf meets the branch. And again, magnolias have 2 sides to them, so you're going to want to, I'm going to do that with about 3 leaves, just to start off with. So kind of decide, you know, do you want more brown or do you want more green? I really like the brown. I think it's a great color to bring out and kind of pop in there. And then I'm going to decide kind of where I want those to fit in. Again, great part about the grapevine wreath, there's some natural gluing almost that takes place without being too permanent. So you have a little bit of room to play. Again, these are a big heavy elements of the wreath, so you're going to kind of want to be somewhat strategic in how you put these in there. You know, I really like to overlap them like that. I think that's a good look, but then again, I'm kind of covering up some of my other, whoops, I just dropped them on the floor. Cover up some of my other elements, so maybe I turn this a little bit more and scooch it up a little bit further like that. Alrighty, so I finally have my magnolia in a spot that I like it. It took a while. So don't worry if it takes you a while because there's a lot going on, so you kind of want to play with it and make sure that you like where you're at. So I used 5. I always try to keep things in odd numbers. So what happened was I stuck this one back a little bit because the brown is beautiful, but it's a lot. So having too much in there is going to be a little bit overpowering. So this way, you're kind of overlapping and sneaking it in so that it plays in with a lot of the other elements. We're going to work with our Brunia next. This has a little bit of a thicker stem, so I want to get it in there before there's too much glue and stuff to make that not possible. So again, kind of look at the back where that main stem is. You're going to want to go about 2 to 3 inches down. And same story, you're going to want to take off all this excess greenery and stuff so that the main focus is this part. Dip that in some glue. I've got a lot going on here, so I think I'm going to stick these kind of right in there to help offset some of that magnolia color and help play in with some of the Carolina sapphire and all of that good eucalyptus. Alrighty, so I just finished up putting my one piece of Brunia in, so now I'm going to start with the other. Again, kind of go down about 2 to 3 inches and then cut, take off some of that excess stuff. I'm going to be putting this one probably right in there. Yeah, that works. And then, you know, you can feel free to use some of this other green stuff. That is not a problem. Like, I would probably maybe put some up in here just to kind of help carry that through a little bit more. And again, it's up to you and the kind of products that you have too. Alrighty. turn that just a little bit, and then I'm going to move on to some of my larger pieces. So I'm going to move on to my lotus right now. You'll have two pieces. One is going to be a little bit larger than the other. So what I'm going to do is just kind of group those together in here, just kind of like that, and then I'll stick my cotton in to help supplement that a little bit. So I'm going to start with this guy. And again, just put some glue on the end there. And you're going to kind of want to stick that in. It's okay if it's covering up some of your magnolia leaves a little bit more. And if your magnolia aren't staying as well, because it's a really big leaf for a really small stem, feel free to take some glue and you can kind of press them down against some of the other pieces too. Just be careful because these are live, so a live green, so if you put too much on there, it might burn them just a little bit. So be careful of how much glue you put in. So then I finished up with that. I'm going to move on to my cotton. Again, you'll have three pieces. You'll kind of want to get it so that your stem is about 1 inch to 2 inches long, depending on where you're going to be sticking it. I'm going to put another piece of cotton up against these. That's a really great contrast for the dark color of the lotus pods. And then I've got one piece left that I think I'm going to stick in right down there. Alrighty, so now that my cotton is in, our last piece is going to be this syringium. So you're going to want to take off these yellow pieces here, and then cut down a little bit on below that. I would maybe say, 3 inches again from the flower. These you're just going to kind of stick in wherever you think needs a little pop of color. So I'm going to start putting one here, and then kind of try to keep the same amount on either side of the central part of the wreath.
And there we go.
There we have it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in and making your wreath with us this holiday season. And we want to wish you a very Merry Christmas from the Grapevine Company.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.